You're right, guys. Welcome to Football and Fitness United. My name's James, and it's our first football video, believe it or not, and none other than the Manchester Derby kicking off tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So I thought I'd bring a special guest in to chat about it. So hopefully you recognise him. Statman Cam, how are we doing, mate?
Yeah, good. I love the intro. Love that intro. It's brilliant, that.
It's good, isn't it? Everyone's like, oh, but what are you going to do when the Glazers go? I'm like, well, I'll keep it. Like, it's just like, it's a big part of our history. Like, I'm always going to be Glazers out. Even once they actually go out, I'm still going to remember it. Like, it's a big thing in our history, right?
Yeah, of course. And it's it's amazing to be on the channel, and all the work you've done so far is fantastic. I mean, it looks sleek. It looks really, really good. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be here as one of the first few people on it. So thank you.
No worries, man. Let's hope the content lives up to the actual hype, right? So we've got our topics scrolling across the bottom of the screen for you all to look at now. So we're going to talk about our backline, obviously massive improvements there with the signing of Martinez and Malacia. We're going to talk about our opposition in City. We're going to talk about the season so far, and then we're going to go for a bit of nostalgia and talk about our favourite Derby goal. We've got a couple that we can show you hopefully as well. Then we're going to look at predicted 11s. And we're going to look at predicted scores as well. So, yeah, could be an interesting game. First of all, mate, you're looking forward to it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a lot more positive now than in previous years, because in previous years it was always, yes, we could nick a result if we counter-attack, but regardless, we're so far behind them that I don't really see any positives anyway. But this season, I think we could... Yeah, again, it's probably going to be on the counter. We're probably going to have to sort of concede a lot of possession. And yes, we still are a long way off, but in the general picture of the season, there's a lot more progress. There's a lot more positive. Some of the new signings are looking good. We look a lot better in every phase of the game. We look a lot better with the ball, a lot better defensively. And on the counter as well, we look a little bit more polished, a little bit sharper than we did last season. So, yeah, I think even though it's always going to be a tough game, I'm a lot more positive going into it than I have been before.
Does that not worry you a bit though? Because I looked at a tweet before and I retweeted it, and it was like our last 8 results at the Etihad, and I was like, actually, our results have been really good there. Like, we've got some good results, but we've always been the underdog recently, as strange as that sounds, for Manchester United versus Manchester City. And actually, I was speaking to a City fan this morning, and I was like, this is a strange one because it's the best form City have been in for a while. Haaland, we'll speak about him in a bit, but it's been fantastic for them. And it's the best form United have been in for a while. Like, no one else has won their last 4 in the league apart from us. So we're in good form as well. So it's like, I don't know whether I'm seeing a bit of false sense of security from United fans, because a lot of them are like, yeah, we're going to get a result. And I'm like, oh, it could go one or two ways. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I back us to get a result, but at least in general, we look a lot better than we have in recent seasons. And sometimes it's one of those where, you know, if you want to turn a team into title contenders, sometimes you start off in the depths that we have been in the last few seasons, where you're finishing sort of 7th, 8th. And against the big teams, you can counterattack, you can produce a result a few times. Because against the top 6, you've got, 10 games a season? Chances are you'll probably nick a result in a couple of them if that's how it goes. Yeah. So that's where you're at one stage. But the next level up is you become better as a team. You take more points from the games against the other 14 teams in the league. But then in those top games, you try and play your way. You try and impose yourself on those games. And if the other team's sharper than you, if they're better at what they've been doing, which they probably will be because they've been doing it for a bit longer, then you can end up with some pretty nasty results. So that could be the stage we're at now. But in general, it's obviously we haven't seen United play for, 2-3 weeks now. So there's that. There's the positivity of this season. So I'm looking forward to it, whatever happens.
Yeah, I'm massively looking forward to it, mate. So you talked about improvements. Let's talk about the main improvement in the team. Hey, let's talk about our backline. Thoughts on Malacia, thoughts on Martinez, thoughts on Varane, and thoughts on Dalot. That's our first choice back four, right? What do you make of them so far?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Dalot. I've backed him in a lot of times when people haven't necessarily seen eye to eye in that sense.
Maybe.
I think I think the big thing for me was with him is that knowing what he is and isn't good at. I think final third, he can still do a lot of work on his crossing, his end product. But what he's always been good at is, because he's so two-footed, he can always help you progress the ball, move it forward. He can drop it, he can sort of invert, tuck into that midfield area, and he can play alongside whoever it is that's the deepest midfielder, and he can help you move that ball forward. So he's really, really good at doing that. But he struggles with some other areas of the game. But defensively, he's not the best, especially when he's on the back foot, having to go back towards his own goal. If he's aggressive, he's physically very good. Like that's one of the first few things I remember from when I first saw him play at Old Trafford is that actually he's massive. He is a massive guy.
Yeah, he's a unit.
But if he's aggressive on the front foot, there's not many wingers that are going to be able to hold him off. So as long as he's got that ability to go forward and do things defensively, fine. He's a decent enough player. Obviously, when he's running back towards his own goal, he struggles a bit. He's not the best, but he'll develop in that area. So Dello, I'm pretty happy with. Raphael Varane, obviously, look, the guy is brilliant. He's whatever you want to call him, Rolls Royce, whatever you want to say, but the guy doesn't break stride when he's defending. He doesn't like. You don't see him having to panic. You know how Eric Bailly just. I love the guy.
They're not in the same conversation, mate. Honestly,
no, but
they're completely different levels of defender, aren't they?
Exactly, but in the way that like Eric Bailly or some of the other players, they have to make random movements that just come out of thin air, and you have no idea how he's got his foot up there or whatever's happened. You just don't really see that with Varane. Everything's so controlled, so composed, so calm, and he never seems like he's having to break sweat. Really, it's
amazing, mate. Obviously, like defending, and a lot of defending is positional, right? So everyone used to laud Wan-Bissaka for his tackling ability. It's like, well, you're having to go to ground because you're out of position so much, and that's the same with Eric Bailly. Like you're out of position, and then you're trying to recover, right? And I remember having an argument on Twitter ages ago with a guy because I was like, you look at someone like Paolo Maldini, very rarely went to floor, and then they proceeded to send me a compilation of Maldini slide tackles. I'm like, yes, if he has to, he will do that. But I can show you hundreds of games where he didn't have to go to ground because positionally he was one of the best defenders I've ever seen. And that's the thing with Raphael Varane. You look at him, and throughout a game, when he's partnered with Martinez, who we'll touch on in a minute, instead of Maguire, he just looks very calm. He's positionally very good. He's got all the attributes. His pace is good. He's good in the air. He's got a left foot, a right foot. I mean, Madrid obviously sold him for a reason, maybe his injury record, and that's the only real negative because multiple Champions League winner, utter class whenever you watch him. And yeah, he's one of the first names on the team sheet, if fit, surely.
Yeah, he never panics, does he? That's the brilliant thing is whatever situation you put him in, he's always composed, always deals with it the right way. And his partnership with Martinez has been brilliant so far. I think as well, he brings more confidence to the other players around him. You can see Dalot's more willing to be aggressive when he's playing with Varane compared with when he's playing with anyone else, really, even if it's Lindelof or Maguire, because he knows Varane's had to cover him. He knows he's got the pace. And he knows as well, I think the big thing is, compared to playing with Maguire, if Maguire's covering Dalot knows if the cross goes in, we've got a problem because Maguire's too close to me because he's so slow. Yeah. Whereas with Varane's just close enough that obviously with his pace, he can get that to cover him if he needs it, but he's also in the right place to defend the cross as well. So it brings the best out of everyone, really.
Yeah, I 100% agree, mate. So you mentioned Martinez. Talk to me about him. Like, how good has he been, man?
Oh, he's fantastic. And he is really the best possible partner for Raphael Varane. It's like what Varane's had at Madrid when he's been in his best possible form is Sergio Ramos being aggressive, going out there to try and stop the striker. He doesn't wait for them to come to him. He goes out there and he makes himself known. He imposes himself on the striker. And look, Sergio Ramos isn't the tallest either. Obviously, Martinez is a bit smaller than Ramos still. But that's what Raphael Varane needs. And it's what Manchester United need. We need one that can go in and one that can drop off. And it's in the modern game when a lot of teams play with just one striker, if you're leaving two centre-backs just sat at the back the whole time, a lot of the time you're losing the midfield battle because you've got the striker dropping in to create an overload. Yeah. Or sometimes potentially you're losing out on other areas of the pitch. If you've got a centre-back that is good enough and quick enough and reads the game well enough to go and be aggressive, go and step up and get involved in that midfield battle when he has to, which Martinez has done at times, then you're in a much better place than if you haven't got that. And compared to having Harry Maguire as a left centre back, he's been a massive improvement because when Maguire goes in, he often makes that decision late. And what will feed into that is obviously confidence in his own ability, confidence in his own sort of pace, which he clearly doesn't have any confidence in it because there's no pace to have confidence in. But with Martinez, he trusts himself to get there quick enough. If he doesn't, he knows he'll get back in time, so he's okay. So you can start us off in terms of what he brings on the board. It's brilliant.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And last but not least, Malacia, what a signing he's turned out to be. One that came out of nowhere, to be honest, for a reasonable fee. I'll be completely honest. I thought he was going to be second choice when he first came in. I was like, I didn't see him taking over Luke Shaw, but as soon as he got his chance, never looked back. And he's keeping Shaw out of the team. And Shaw had a decent-ish performance for England, and he looks like a lot fitter and stuff. But it's not his place to get back, is it? Shaw at the moment, Malacia's right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you weren't the only one who thought it would be second choice. I think everyone around the world, every Man United fan and probably every football fan around the world thought he would be second choice. Eric Ten Hag thought he was second choice because he started Shaw in the first couple of games.
He did, yeah.
But the big thing is, the only reason Malacia is playing, let's just be completely clear about this, the only reason Malacia's even got in the team is because Luke Shaw's attitude is a problem. Whether it's his... I'm not sure necessarily whether it's his, whether he's a bad kid. I think I can't really say that. I don't think that's fair to say. But I think in terms of on the pitch, he clearly needs some sort of external pressure, external factors to make him work hard, to keep himself in shape, and to, when he gets on the pitch, chase everything down. Because that's the biggest thing that Malacia has over Luke Shaw. Technically, Luke Shaw probably is one of the best left backs around, but he can pull off some brilliant passes and crosses that not many other players can do, and he's brilliant in build up, and he has been for a long time for United. But the problem is, there's a lot more to the game than just that. And Malacia, in terms of defensively, he's been... Look, when you see Luke Shaw, or when he gets past Luke Shaw, he sort of maybe, if Shaw's on the ground in this case, he takes maybe like 30 seconds to get up and takes his time, doesn't really put too much effort in. If someone gets past Malacia, he doesn't give up. He goes straight back at them for the next bite. He keeps going and going and going. And that's the big difference. If you've got that in your team, you've got players that chase things down like he does. It robs off on your teammates, and it makes the job a lot harder for wingers. And that left side for United with Shaw and Maguire in recent seasons has been a massive problem. And if you look on paper, Harry Maguire is supposedly a decent ball-playing centre-back. Obviously, he struggled a bit recently when he's not been given the time he needs on the ball. And Luke Shaw, obviously, he's had some brilliant seasons, brilliant performances for England, some fantastic sort of periods of time for United as well. But the biggest thing that Martinez and Malacia bring is aggression, work rate, and they're always on the front foot, and that makes so much difference for us.
I mean, to be honest, it's a really strange one, because if you look at like a Ten Hag fullback and someone that can get involved in the build-up play, I mean, people will disagree with me about this, but Luke Shaw fits the bill more than Tyrell Malacia does. But then if you look at the majority, well, all of the signings actually in the summer, because I wasn't going to include Eriksen, but I think I do have to include him now, their attitude is amazing. Their aggression to win the ball back's incredible. Like, all of them have a great attitude, and that's something that's really stanked the place out at Old Trafford over the last couple of seasons. So when we look at the signings of the summer, when everyone was rating it, a 5, 6 out of 10 window, I said at the time, I'm like, I think it's like an 8 or 9 out of 10 window. I think it's absolutely superb. You can go on about, the business wasn't done early and it wasn't done this. And yeah, I get that. But let's just look at the actual players. We were never going to sign 11 in. We were never going to get rid of 11 either. And I think every single person that's come in, with the exception of Dubravka, has improved that first 11. Like, Malacia has come in, improved our left-back position. Martinez has come in, improved centre-back. Eriksen has obviously improved us massively. Anthony looks like he's going to improve us. And we made good signings as far as I'm concerned. So you mentioned, obviously, the centre-backs and stuff, and how if you play with 2 at the back and, we're going to leave... we might leave someone, lose other areas of the pitch. So we're going to branch from that to talking to the opposition, because a certain centre-forward is having quite a good season. So you're the tactician. Cam, give us the master plan. How do we stop him?
The truth is, honestly, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to stop him. There is very little you can do, because he is such a good player physically, in terms of his pace, in terms of his desire to get on the end of things. He is absolutely unbelievable. So I think it's not really a case of stopping Haaland. It's more a case of stopping the service to Haaland. I think that's the only way, really, to be honest. And in terms of doing that, I think it's going to be a tough job. I think I'd be surprised with in terms of what Ten Hag goes with. I can't see him changing the team too much. I think it's whether Rashford and Martial are fit. If both of them aren't fit to start the game, I think we might see Bruno Fernandes as a false 9, and we'll see Fred brought back into midfield. If we see that, it's a very, very defensive game plan, and it probably means Fred's going to be a man marking Kevin De Bruyne. But that's the best chance I think we have of keeping Haaland quiet for the entire game. However, I think in terms of winning the game, that doesn't help us. I think that just nullifies us too much in our own game. I think the best thing we can possibly do is probably accept that we're going to concede 1, maybe 2, and just go out there and try and score more. It's reckless. And it doesn't mean that we have to try and dominate the ball all the time, but what it means is that when we get chances, when we get spells, we have to take them. And the way we've set up so far this season, I think we will, because you've seen a lot of the time that we can sustain our attacks a lot better because we're much narrower. So when the ball does get cleared out, if we don't score on the first wave of attack, we get another wave and another wave and another wave. So I think that does give us a good chance going into it.
Yeah, I mean, Ten Hag mentioned it in his press conference, and you mentioned it there. It's not just about stopping Haaland; it's about stopping City, and stopping the service to Haaland. Because if Haaland doesn't pop up, Foden might pop up, De Bruyne might pop up, Cancelo might pop up. They've got a wealth of talent throughout that whole team that can pop up and cause us problems. So it's not just about Haaland, but he is superb. So we had to talk about him. Let's talk about two of the best creative midfielders in the league, in my opinion. Let's talk about Kevin De Bruyne and let's talk about Eriksen. Who would you rather have in your team?
Oh, if you're giving me the choice, obviously Kevin De Bruyne. No one's taken Eriksen.
Twist your arm.
Yeah.
No, but how good has Eriksen been, and how influential and how important is he to what we do on the football pitch?
Eriksen's been brilliant, but the big thing for him is that what he's worked on over the summer is he's worked on his fitness, his durability, and his sort of injury resistance. So that's what has been a bit of a problem in recent years for some of Eriksen's career. And being able to go from where he's been in the last couple of years with all the stuff that's happened to him to playing maybe 2-3 times a week for United is a big step. He's done a lot of work on that over the summer. I think I've heard from sort of indirectly via his personal trainer that that's what he's mainly been focused on during the summer. And because of that, he looks fit, he looks sharp, and he's one of the few that actually keeps running right the way through to the end of the 90 minutes. There's certain other players, maybe Faz has said it a couple of times, Sancho maybe can't sustain his endurance for 90 minutes, but Eriksen definitely can. And I think that's a big trade-off that United haven't really had in recent seasons. We've had someone maybe that can do that, maybe Matic in terms of the way he's able to move the ball, sort of bring it out from the defensive side, but his mobility is not there in the way that Eriksen's got. So I think what Eriksen brings is obviously his playmaking is brilliant. He's able to get the ball up the pitch fantastically for us in a way that nobody else can. But in terms of running and athletic sort of power, he's far and away sort of the best playmaker type that we've had in recent seasons, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a strange one because I never really thought I'd be saying it, but you've taken the best attributes of Fred and the best attributes of Matic in terms of spreading the ball and the energy and positioning off the ball, and you've combined them, which is really good. And people may think, Fred and Matic aren't good enough, but it's like you've taken the best attributes of both. And let's not forget that not only did he have a career-threatening injury, he had a life-threatening health scare, right? And not only has he come back to play professional football, not only has he come back to play for one of the biggest teams in the world, he's come back to arguably be the best player in one of the biggest teams in the world, which is like absolutely unbelievable. So yeah, you're still taking De Bruyne though over Eriksen, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think De Bruyne is one of the best around, and I'd be very surprised if by the time he retires, he's not in pretty much everyone's all-time Premier League 11. I don't see any way he can't be at this point. He's incredible.
Isn't there a stat that he's never won Player of the Month though? And Rashford,
never won it. It's
unreal. Absolutely unreal. So moving on, we're going to chat about the season so far. So obviously, I think we spoke after the first game. I think you were at the Brighton game, right? Yeah, we did the player ratings afterwards, didn't we? So you were at the Brighton game. So obviously, it's a very different mood around Old Trafford and around Manchester United now than it was after that game. So what do you think of the season so far? How's it changed since the first two games? How much credit does the manager deserve in turning it round?
I think the big turning point was that after those two games, Ten Hag's obviously sort of looked and reassessed everything every decision he's made in terms of Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw in particular, in terms of their appearances, whether they're even making the team. And he's decided, you know what? I've given you two chances now. You're not getting any more. You're done. He's given other people chances. They've performed. But one of the things I liked most was, do you remember after the Brentford game when obviously there was the stats that they'd outrun us massively throughout
when he ran, he got them to run.
Yeah, he got them to run. But the biggest thing I liked about this, and I might get sort of some players maybe throwing this on my face later in the season, but I really liked that he got and done the running himself. I don't know what's going on out here, but I have no idea.
Don't worry about it. But for those of you that don't know, Cam actually coaches a team. So when he's saying he might get a bit of flack for it, I think he's probably expecting that some of his players might see this and get him to run 13 kilometres later on in the season.
Yeah, it's one of those where actually there were all those leaks and reports that always come out of the United dressing room that, the players are unhappy with this. They're not happy that they've been asked to run this. I don't think it's appropriate or whatever. And then there were leaks. So that was the leak before. And then after it had happened, the players were saying, actually, you know what? They really respected Ten Hag for doing it. And the mood instantly got lifted massively because he was doing it. And look, I don't know. I can't speak for Ten Hag's fitness. I have no idea how good his fitness is, but I don't think he's running as much as Premier League players do on a daily basis. So that would have been tough for him. That's a big old run. So fair enough to him for doing it. And doing something like that early on, in a way, it's a blessing in disguise. Those first 2 games and then having that after it, I think it's brought the whole squad, the whole club really behind Ten Hag. And now there's no excuse. There's nowhere to hide for anyone because it's not just the team that gets punished. He accepts responsibility as well. They're all in it together. And I think that's the big thing. After the first 2 games, that's what's changed. Everyone's behind the manager. Everyone's together, and they trust his decisions. And look, you might get players that are unhappy about it. Maguire won't be happy not to be playing. Luke Shaw won't be happy. Ronaldo can't be happy with the start of the season. But none of them can actually go and say, we haven't been given a chance. And they also can't say that the manager hasn't got the best interests of the club at heart. So they can complain that they should be playing or whatever. But the reality is the manager's got the best interests of the team at heart and he's making the best decision to win games. So they can't complain anymore. All of the excuses that the players have been using for 5, 6, 7 years, they're gone. That's the big thing.
Well, player power has been rife for a long time, hasn't it? And I know players have complained for years about, having to go home in the dark, training being too tough, double training sessions, all this kind of thing. And I remember an article was written a couple of months ago, and it was like Ten Hag's 5 unwritten or written down rules or something, where it was like, if you skip training, you do this. If you're late for this, then this is your punishment. If you're found to leak anything, then you're just exiled from the team completely. There was all these rules coming out. And I was like, finally, someone with a bit of authority in the squad, right? Because everyone seems to think that, oh, you're dealing with millennials, you're dealing with newer generation players, they don't respond to that kind of thing. But it's like, well, maybe they don't respond in the same way that a 90s or 2000s player would. But at the same time, there needs to be some kind of authority because they were getting away with murder for too long. Like you said, certain players' attitudes were stinking the place out. And Old Trafford's a completely different place now. Like if you look at the attitude of later on in the Brighton game, it was fairly toxic at Old Trafford. It got quite a few, there was quite a few boos and stuff. When we went behind. Whereas compare that to the Sociedad game, once we've been playing better football, we went 1-0 down there and there was chancing for the next 10 minutes to try and get us back. So yes, we lost both games, but the attitude in the ground was completely different from one game to the next. And I'm seeing much more positivity in the dressing room. I'm seeing much more positivity on social media, on Twitter and stuff. There's still negativity, obviously, but nowhere near as much as before. The majority of fans are behind this manager more than any manager probably since the first few games of Ollie and since Sir Alex Ferguson. Everyone seems bought into Erik ten Hag's principle. There's a few people that disagree on what he needs to do this season and expectations and stuff. So I'll throw that one back at you. What do you expect us to do this season and what would you kind of be happy with? Where's the line in the sand that you wouldn't be happy?
I expect top 4. Now, after the start of the season we've had, I expect top 4. And I'd be really unhappy if we finish below 5th, I would say. If we just miss out on top 4, I'd be frustrated, but I could sort of accept it. But I think that's below 5th, I'd be a bit annoyed because the way the season started, the mess Liverpool are in, that opens up another spot that we didn't think would be there. The only team
they've just drawn, by the way. I've just looked at the Premier League table live and they've dropped down to 9th on 10 points. So I think they probably drew that game because they were on 12 in the live table. So.
Oh, yeah, they drew.
Was it 3-3? Hat-trick. Oh, lovely. Not that I do fantasy footy, but congratulations for anyone that's got Trossard in their team. But yeah, go on, Cam.
No, it's I think Liverpool, their start to the season to open up another spot in the top 4 that we didn't think would happen. Before the start of the season, everyone was pretty much saying City and Liverpool nailed on 1st and 2nd. But now that Liverpool have seemingly just completely bottled it, there's another spot open up there. So there's 3 spots now for United, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Spurs. So 3 of those 4 teams will get it.
And Newcastle judging off today.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
You never know. Literally, you never know. Every so often, it something's thrown up in there in the mix. I mean, I'm not expecting them to get top 4. Don't say that I am, but I think they could be up and around, the 5th, 6th, 7th spot and challenging for the majority of the season. And I expect them to have a big January as well and probably invest if they're in any kind of race, because we all know how the royalties you get from Champions League football and stuff. So if they're in with any chance come January, those owners are going to throw the checkbook at the lot in January to try and cement that top 4 place. So they have a chance as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think with them as well, what they've got this season is they've got that sort of season of being a little bit unknown in a lot of ways. No one's really taking them as seriously as they would preparing for some of the best opposition about, the sort of Cities, Liverpool, Chelsea, those sorts of teams. So they've got that little bit of unknown about them. Obviously, a lot of new players as well still, and a lot of new players to sort of try and work into the team to play together. A lot of new relationships that could be formed within the team. So yeah, they're still unknown. I think they've got that. I think next season it will start to get harder for them because people will start seeing them as actually this is a really tough game now. Whereas I think they're in that intermediate stage where people are thinking, okay, this is a serious team, we should be prepared, but no one's sort of motivated as they would be to go to Old Trafford, for example. So it's a weird one, but yeah, I hope and expect we get top 4. Europa League, honestly, I don't really mind too much. I think obviously if we finished 5th, I'd want us to win the Europa League, so we're in the Champions League next year. But honestly, not too bothered about it. I think I'd rather focus on the league, especially given the amount of minutes a lot of players are going to be playing with the World Cup during the season as well. I think it's not like this season's going to define Erik ten Hag's reign. So I'd rather the players go into next season in the best possible condition rather than being burnt out by a ridiculous amount of minutes this year.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to look at one thing as like the final destination and one as the journey, right? And it's like winning the Europa League and finishing in the top 4 both have the same destination, but how you get there is different. One, you can have a decent cup run, and the other, you're one of the top 4 teams averaging over a 38-game season. And that stands you in much better stead for progression the next season than winning a cup competition does. I know the winning breeds a winning mentality, but I'd much rather be better over an average of 38 games than a lot of my competition and qualify on merit that way, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think the league is is definitely the big one. It's I think if you know you finish in the top 4 over, as you said, over 38 games, you know you're in a good place to go and push on and actually be in a title race properly the season after, especially when the project's on the way up in general, as it clearly is for us at the minute. So I think, there's rumours coming out of Carrington, aren't there, that the players and the squad all believe that the only real title rival this season they've got is Man City.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I can't say I agree, but it's nice to hear that they've got that sort of aspiration, that sort of mentality with it, isn't it? First time in a while.
I'm not against that kind of mentality, like Ten Hag coming in saying, listen, these two teams are in great positions, but eras end, like they come to an end, they don't last forever. So I love that mentality. Like, let's knock another team off their perch, eh? So
already got it to Liverpool.
I know. As Fergie said, going to do whatever I can to knock them off their perch. So let's go from talking about the future and now let's kind of relive some memories, right? So we're going to talk about favourite Manchester derby goals. And let's talk about Cam's. So we had a discussion, Cam, about favourite Manchester derby goals, and your one happens to be from one of your favourite players, right?
Yeah, it does. It's a lot of people know I'm a massive fan of Scott McTominay, and this one for me, the exact opposite end. But that's top 10 life moments for me, just being there for that, because the amount of just chaos that was going on in not even just football wise, just in the world at that time, like no one really knew what was going to happen. There were rumors of sort of lockdowns coming in. There was rumors that all this sort of stuff would be happening. Obviously there were the sort of Igalo signing, the chance that he's obviously maybe like brought whatever with him from brought the virus with him or whatever, so we're all going to die kind of thing, all that sort of stuff going on. And it was a mess. No one really knew that before that game, in 2 or 3 days time, we'd be plunged into lockdown. And so that was the last memory. Obviously there was that. I think after that we might have played like Lask away or something, but that was for most people the last proper memory of United we had for what, a year and a half, 18 months, like last time in the stadium. Until obviously that game against Fulham when Cavani scored that other brilliant goal.
Unbelievable.
That was it was crazy. Offside, but they must have just been like such a good goal.
I think they looked at it, realised it was offside, and they're like, we can't chalk this goal. Like first game back after COVID, we can't chalk it off. We just can't. Like look at it, look what it means to him, look at the fans. Like you can't. VAR obviously is there to make correct decisions, and obviously we're jesting. Like they could and probably should have ruled it out.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, I'm like taking away moments like that. It's like imagine if Solskjaer was offside in '99, right? It's like you're taking away all that emotion, that moment in history of the fans celebrating in that moment. Because football and sport is all about moments, right? Like we can look at a table which says played 38, you had this many points, but all I remember is moments during the season. I remember me being there, how it made me feel, emotions at the time. Like I remember when we lost the league to City, I remember being on the coach back from Sunderland, like absolutely brokenhearted. Then the next year, I remember a certain someone scoring a goal in the derby to win us the game. And funnily enough, we're going to move on to my favourite derby goal now. And I wonder which one it could be. It couldn't possibly be from this man right here. So setting the scene, I think we're 2-2, about 5 minutes into stoppage time. Van Persie steps up, Nasri turns his back like an absolute wuss. Joe Hart floundering all over the place. A lot of sour blue faces, not very happy. So winning 3-2 at the Etihad, obviously City had won the league the year before. So Fergie signed Van Persie to win us back the league, which he obviously did by like 12 or 13 points. But yeah, what a moment. As Gary Neville said there, Robin Van Persie was signed from Manchester United, or by Manchester United, from Arsenal to win us the league. And he did just that. So absolutely buzzing with that. So let's move back onto Sunday. We've had our little moment of nostalgia and we're going to talk about predicted 11. So I'm going to put Cams across the bottom. Do you want to talk us through this predicted 11, mate, and why you've gone with what you've gone with?
Yeah, so I think for maybe 10 of the 11 players, it's pretty much exactly as you'd expect. The one difference that I've got here is Martial starting up front. And the only reason for that, nothing to do with what I think would be best for the team, more just because Rashford's apparently only trained for one session and Martial's been training all week. So in terms of fitness, I'd like Martial to be fit if he's trained all week. Could be completely wrong, never know. But yeah, I think if he's completely fit and Rashford isn't, then it would make more sense to start him. So that's where it is. Obviously, back four is the same as what's been pretty much impenetrable for other teams in recent weeks. Ironclad back four there. McTominay and Eriksen, you can't take Scott out of the team at the minute. It's been brilliant. Eriksen as well. Bruno will be excited for this game. And, Bruno and Martial have a good little track record in Manchester derbies. So
they do.
Hopefully we can keep that going. Rashford off the bench late in the game to score the winner. Wouldn't mind that either.
So let's touch on something you said, actually, because I agree with you. Not in terms of the predicted 11, we've got one player different, but in terms of I don't think you can drop Scott. But we're probably not in the majority of the fan base here. There's a lot of people of the opinion that you've spent this money on Casemiro. He's obviously one of like the best CDMs in the world, probably top 5, top 3 in the world. He has to start. It's a big game against City. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. Not saying I agree. I definitely don't. But where's your thought on that? Why did you say that you can't drop Scott at the moment?
Look, McTominay's been in brilliant form and he's been every single aspect of his role that he needs to do within Ten Hag's system, he's executed brilliantly. And in terms of adding that steel to the midfield, in terms of that mobility that he's got, it's fantastic. I'm not saying Casemiro doesn't have it. I mean, he's a good player as well, but I think Casemiro is still adjusting to the league. And you look at some of the other sort of big players that City and Liverpool have bought in recent years. Guardiola and Klopp have fed them in slowly. It does not mean to say maybe in 6 months' time or whenever we play City at Old Trafford, that Casemiro shouldn't start in that game. By then, he might have worked his way into the team. He might be the starting first choice. But for now, where we are in the season, McTominay has been brilliant. And what I like about him is that I think in the way the team plays at the moment, he's the perfect player. I think for Casemiro, to get the best out of him, he'll take a lot of adapting to the role Scott's playing in terms of being in the midfield rather than dropping into a back three to try and build up. Yeah. And I think that's just too big of a change to the team at the moment to get the best out of him. So for me, I think stylistically, McTominay is the better fit, and you've got to go with what the best fit is for your team. It's about the whole thing under Ten Hag, and the biggest change from previous eras is that it's not about individual players, it's about the collective unit, and that's what Scott McTominay is brilliant for. He's not the best player on the pitch every week, but he produces a fairly consistent level of performance, does a decent job, and gets the ball to the more talented players in front of him. So I see no reason to drop him.
Yeah, we completely agree. We have completely the same standpoint. And basically, the way I see it is exactly what Cam said. Like, you don't win a game by having 11 brilliant individuals on the pitch. You have good individuals that gel together as a team, and your manager picks that team. And no matter who has the opinion that Casemiro should start over Scott, it's the manager that has the most important opinion, and it's his decision that counts. And clearly at the moment, he sees no reason to drop him. He sees him playing very well. Whenever he's asked about Casemiro, he says, he's a fantastic player, but then he always adds in at the end of his answer, but Scott's playing very well at the moment. Scott's doing this. Scott's bringing this to the team. And listen, it's like everyone seemed to get a blank canvas, a fresh start under Ten Hag, but for some reason, fans didn't want to give Scott one. And let's just isolate it. Forget the first 2 games, because we're forgetting the first 2 games for Varane as well, by the way. Let's forget them for everyone. Forget the first 2 games for everyone. Let's look at the last 4 in the league and then Europa League games. He's been superb. He's been at least a 7 out of 10 in every game. Some games he's been an 8. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. And if he didn't have the name McTominay on the back of his shirt, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. That's the way I see things. I really don't think we'd be having it. So I'm going to bring up my predicted 11. As I said, it's basically the same as Cam's. You've got De Gea, Delova, Varane, Martinez, Malacia. You've got McTominay, as I've just said, Eriksen and Fernandes. That picks itself, in my opinion. And then you've got Sancho, Anthony. And the one difference I've got Rashford. I heard earlier in the week he was fit. Nothing's changed to dissuade me of that. To be honest, I was told that he'd play Sunday, and that was that. And on your thing that Martial's been training all week, Rashford's only just come back to training, that I agree with, but also Martial's had a longer layoff, so he needs longer to get back in the team. Like Martial's been out of the team for longer than Rashford has, so Rashford's may have only had one or two training sessions, but he's also been playing football. Martial has no match fitness whatsoever, so he has to build that back up. So that's the kind of way I see things.
Yeah, I think as well, in terms of the fit for the game, I think Rashford's a better fit for this match in terms of his explosive pace, ability to do. I think the biggest way to beat City is that they try and, when they go forward, they leave that structure at the back of the two centre-backs, Rodri and one of the full-backs tucking in, normally Kyle Walker. And what you've got to do to be able to beat that is you need a striker that can start within that structure to keep them nice and narrow, keep them sort of compact as that structure. But then as the ball comes forward, as your team win it back, the striker's got to break out onto the wing and then be able to hold up the ball and get that up the pitch at the same time to bring everyone else into play. And I think Martial's very good at hold-up play, but in terms of that explosive burst that you need to get from that box at the centre, within that, to try and draw them in, then that explosion out to the wing to get the ball and sort of get up the pitch, I think Rashford's better for that. I think he's more explosive, more able to do that. And if he's fit, he should start.
So we both picked our 11s, but we both based it on players that are just coming back from injury. So let's talk about the options if those players aren't fit. So I like the obvious option is Cristiano Ronaldo as the number 9, but you brought in a different option when we were chatting before. So talk to us about a potential false 9 option that you came up with.
Yeah, so I think obviously Ronaldo's an option, but for me, I don't think he helps us win the game. I think it leaves us a man short, really, because he doesn't really get involved that much in build-up. And one of the key things for what Ten Hag does is because we play fairly narrow, we need the pitch to be stretched vertically. So that means you need a striker that runs in behind, constantly moving that defensive line deeper. With Ronaldo, he doesn't do that anymore, probably because he doesn't have as much pace anymore. He's not got that confidence. And because of that, even if he does run in behind, defenders don't have to drop off as much because they don't back him either in terms of winning a foot race against them. So I don't see Ronaldo being that effective. I don't see, to be perfectly honest, I don't see a false 9 being that effective either in terms of an attacking game plan to help us win the game. However, I think if Martial and Rashford aren't fit, one way Ten Hag might go, he might put Elanga in the team and put Sancho as a false 9. That could work. But I think the way he will possibly go is Fernandes at false 9. He'll bring Fred into midfield and tell Fred to just sit on Kevin De Bruyne for 90 minutes. And look, defensively, that might help us keep a clean sheet. That might help us cut the supply into Haaland, but I don't see us actually creating many chances from that. So I think it could work. I can see it happening, but in terms of success, I think it's much less likely than if one of Martial or Rashford are fit to start.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think of that, to be honest. It was only came to my mind, obviously, when you brought it up before, and I was like, yeah, it could potentially work. Obviously, the best chance of us winning the game, I think, is to have Martial and Rashford fit, although that does create a selection dilemma. I don't think both of them do start, because that means leaving Anthony or Sancho on the bench, which Sancho's been in goal-scoring form and big moments this season, and Anthony's just signed for 100 million euros, and I don't see any of them relegated to the bench, really. So I think it would be a case of starting one of them as your 9 and then obviously bringing the other one on 60 minutes or whatever if the game gets stretched. So with that in mind, mate, we're going to go on to score predictions. So what are you thinking for tomorrow, man?
I think it comes back to what you said at the start. It goes one of two ways, doesn't it? It's either a heavy defeat or, I think more likely, actually, no, not more likely, possibly 3-1 United. I think at the moment, I think it's really difficult to stop United scoring right now. I think that's a tough ask for any team. I don't think City have the best defense in the league by a stretch. And I don't think Ederson's actually that good of a keeper. If you're able to actually get shots off against Ederson, you'll probably score. And I don't think City are going to stop us getting shots off. I think the way we played this season in terms of sort of sustaining our attacks for wave after wave, we'll get shots off at some point. They will go in. It's just what happens at the other end, really, how well we defend as a team. And yeah, I think, like everyone else, I'm worried about De Bruyne crossing for Haaland. Hopefully, Pep decides to rotate and plays a false 9 or whatever, and something like that happens.
Clearly going to happen. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Funnily enough, with Ederson, I mean, his strengths are exactly what David De Gea's weaknesses are, and vice versa, right? Like if Ederson had the shot-stopping ability of David De Gea, or David De Gea had the distribution and the penalty area, like confidence and control that Ederson had, then there'd be two very, very much world-class goalkeepers, right?
They'd be basically the perfect goalkeeper, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would. They literally have opposite attributes. In terms of, you mentioned United are very hard to keep out. I think United are actually very hard to score against basically, and that statement goes for basically everyone apart from this Man City team, because Haaland just has the ability to create something from nothing. I mean, that goal in the Champions League, man, like Cancelo outside of the right. I'm not here to sing like City's praises, but that ball from Cancelo and then like Haaland, like 8 foot in the air, leaping and putting it in, like that goal is a joke. Like, you can't stop that. That goal is an absolute joke. If they pull that off on Sunday, like if they pull that off tomorrow, like that's in. Like, there's nothing Varane or Martinez or anything's doing during that goal. That's just 2 ridiculous bits of brilliance that you're not stopping. And that's what worries me about tomorrow. So I do think they'll score. I do think we'll score. I'm not as confident as the 3-1 from Cam, but I am going to go for a score draw. So I'm going to go for 2-2. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. So that's been us chatting about the Manchester Derby, basically. There's a thing going across at the bottom, which is like, please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. All helps the channel. This is obviously a very new channel, just started, just hit 50 subs. So big congratulations for that. But in terms of content, there's going to be plenty more coming throughout the week. There's going to be loads of fitness content, and then maybe there'll be a match reaction tomorrow. And who knows, we might even see a Manchester United win. How about that? Do you reckon we're going to see it, Cam?
I was on mute, wasn't I?
That's what that meant. Yeah, go on. Do you think we're going to see it?
I think we will. I was very confident with my score prediction. And you say about Haaland and Cancelo delivering something extraordinary.
Yeah,
I think the one thing we haven't seen from United yet this season is an individual moment of brilliance, and this will be the time to pull it off. You know, Anthony to introduce himself with a cut in from the right side and 30 yards out, curl it into the top corner. So look, we've got some great players as well, so it could be the time for that.
Hey, listen, it could 100% happen. And not that there's going to be more people watching this than follow you on your socials, but do you just want to give a little plug to yourself? Where can they find you? Twitter, YouTube, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, at Statman Cam on everything, like it says up there, if you could see it, because I don't know what's going on with this today. I got the sun. I think it's just the sun's making a mess. It's
we need that in Edison's eyes tomorrow, don't we?
That's we really do.
Yeah, we do. So go follow Cam on all his socials. So I've been James, he's been Cam. This has been Football and Fitness United, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, guys. Oh,